Assalamualaikum and welcome back to our Women in STEM series. Today we have someone without which this series would be incomplete. As a social entrepreneur and science communicator, Lala Rukh founded Science Fuse and has been working for almost a decade to make science accessible to young learners of all socioeconomic backgrounds. Lala Rukh started her journey as a biotech undergrad in Norway, after which she has also worked as a science communicator both in Norway and the UK. She is also an Acumen Fellow and an education champion at Malala Fund, from science demonstrations at underprivileged schools, summer camps for youth, to building a very unique community of science communicators, and even a poster series representing women in STEM. Lala Rukh and her team have been doing some amazing work. So because that's going to be a lot to cover, we'll be dividing today's topics into three main parts, starting from her personal journey in STEM, then moving into how she founded and views Science Views, and then lastly, the lessons she's learned from a decade of social entrepreneurships and future goals. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me here, Abeer. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you for such a kind and elaborate introduction.
So one of my first questions, usually to my guests, is what was your childhood experience in science like? Because I know I wasn't interested in biology before I started pursuing biology.
I think as a child, I often tell this story in different spaces that I was 12 when I fell in love with the DNA molecule. And this didn't happen in a classroom environment. I grew up in Karachi. I was very young when my parents moved us from Norway to Pakistan. So I was born in Oslo, but I was very young. I started school in Pakistan, and we moved to Karachi when I was in fourth grade. And I remember there used to be a children's magazine called Young World, which I think still gets published in Dawn. Dawn is Pakistan's leading newspaper, of course. And in that magazine for children, there was an article about pharmacogenomics. And it sounds like a really complicated word. But in that article, they talked about how in the future, when you visit a doctor, they might take a blood sample and they'll give you personalized medicine. So, based on your genetic makeup. And that was a very novel idea for me. I was just 12 or 13-year old. Um, and in my home, there was this environment where doctors were considered to be people who hold a lot of respect in society. So, from a very early age, I think I grew up in an environment where both my parents are not very highly educated. So, I tell this because people need to understand that your relationship with science depends to some degree also on what kind of exposure, what kind of experiences your parents have had in life.
Yeah.
Um, so, how your parents perceive science, what kind of education did they receive, um, and, how did they engage with science in their life. So, for my parents, the ultimate goal of success was that you become a doctor. And this was almost like it was almost like a pressure that if you don't become a doctor, then you're not good enough. um and especially for girls, I think, because there are certain professions that are or certain fields that are considered very, very
Mhm.
culturally appropriate for women in Pakistan. So in my home, my parents were very keen on academic excellence, that you have to do well in studies, you have to do well and become something in life. Um, and that can sometimes also be a barrier because your worth is seen through what you become, who you become, what you achieve.
Yeah.
Um, so when I read that article, I think now I can think back to that minor detail that I thought to myself, oh, this is even cooler than becoming a doctor. So I was still comparing in my head
Mhm.
to that that level, that standard which my parents had set for me. So I thought, okay, this is even cooler than being a doctor because you're actually doing some kind of research and you're innovating. So even to a 12 or a 13-year-old, this thought comes to your mind that, okay, is this something worth pursuing? Is this cool?
Yeah.
Is this, good enough?
Does this have scope?
Yeah, and also apart from scope, because you're a 12-year-old, you don't know everything about how the world functions,
Yeah.
but what is attractive? What is respective? What will give you validation? I
Hmm.
think when you're so young, you want to be seen and you want to be heard, um on a very different level than we do now as adults.
Hmm.
And you want validation. And at home, you want to be seen as somebody who your parents, approve of or admire. And when love is being also given on the condition of how well you do,
Hmm.
then you start associating these things, with that, oh, if I don't do well in studies, maybe, I will not be loved. Maybe I will
Hmm.
not be valued. These can be very dangerous, ideas. But anyways, I became obsessed with genetics after that article. Just one article, I remember I, you know, um, cut it out, I put it somewhere safe. I used to look at it. And in my biology textbook, everything related to genetics became very cool, very interesting, very fascinating. The DNA molecule itself. And I remember this photo of Watson and Crick in my biology textbook. There is a photo, where they have that model and
Yeah.
they're standing besides it. And I thought they're so handsome and they're so cool. So already you start looking at the world,
Hmm.
in a
Differently.
certain way. There are certain people who start appealing to you, who start looking um very cool, very attractive, very admirable to you. It was
I
very.
have to, I have to ask, because I've noticed that sometimes parents who really prioritize a certain career or being educationally, high achievers, they don't see reading articles or extracurricular stuff as something positive. So, how did you even get to the magazine part? And secondly, did you ever contact the authors of that article and tell them how much your life changed because of them?
No, I was too young, and I obviously, it's now that I can see that connection. It's now after introspection and reflection when I look back that I can actually connect the dots. And this is an exercise we do at Science Fuse where we ask people to think about how their experiences in life with science have been. And that is now, research tells us that these experiences are really important. Something called science capital, which is a concept developed by King's College London, researchers at UCL and Science Museum Group in the UK. And they talk about essentially this, that someone's sense of belonging in science or their confidence to engage with science is not just restricted to the four walls of the classroom. Is not just, it goes beyond that. Of course, what's happening in the classroom will impact how they feel, whether science is something for them or not, but also beyond that. And it's only when I started doing this exercise and started going deeper into this research that I could actually reflect back in my life and could connect the dots, how my parents' attitude, my teachers' attitude, the things I was exposed to, the magazines, the television programs, the friends I was hanging out with, all of these things could have played a part in, helping me connect or disconnect with science over the years. And this is very essential, we feel now in our work, that
Mhm.
educators have this conversation, have these reflections and introspection. And this process will never end, Abir, because I think every single day and every single time I reflect on these experiences, I discover something new. And yes, in my family, in my household, extracurricular activities were frowned upon. Reading was frowned upon. Um, I used to fight with my parents to, be able to read materials that were not, textbooks or
Yeah.
and I remember in my O levels, I got mostly B grades, and my parents were so deeply disappointed. And the
Mm.
first thing my parents did was they got hold of all the books that I had, lots of novels and storybooks, and my mother threw them out of the house and said that,
Oh my gosh.
because of these books, you haven't been able to focus on your studies, and that's why you scored so
Uh-huh.
badly, because most of my class fellows, they got straight A's and I got B's. And later on, when they revealed the percentages, they were very close to A's, they were 89% or something like that.
Mm.
But your worth, at least in my family, the your worth and your yeah, you were basically, your worth was associated with how well you do academically, and everything else was just, sidelined.
That's unfortunate because the more, I'm pretty sure you know this better than anyone else, that the more you teach people through various modes, the more engaged they are, and the more passionate they are towards maybe science or any other field.
Yeah, that's true. And even when it comes to science, the more joyful it is, the more
Hmm.
hands-on it is, the more relevant it is, the more personalized it is, the more it's connected to the world that you see around you.
Mm.
And we
Yep.
tell this to school leaders, we tell this to teachers, we tell this to even policymakers, that something really beautiful about science is that it's universal. It's the same in Paris, it's the same in Pakistan,
Yeah.
which is really amazing. But science communication has to be personalized and localized. I can't change the formula of a water molecule. I shouldn't
Hmm.
be doing that. I can't say that, it's not H2O, it's something else.
Yeah.
Um, but when I speak about water, I have to be mindful of who's sitting in front of me. What language do I use? How do I connect it to their local environment, to their local everyday life, to their
So
local
you can't copy
geography?
paste things.
Yeah.
It needs to be tailored.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is true for any kind of engagement, that the more personal it feels, the more you would like
Yep.
to connect with it and do it more.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you grew up in Pakistan, but then you moved to Norway, right? What
Yes,
was that shift like?
I moved to Norway as an adult, even though I was
Uh-huh.
born there. But my parents moved us to Pakistan when we were very young. So we
Mm-hmm.
started our schooling in Pakistan. Initially, the first 3 years, my brother and I, we lived in Lahore, and then we shifted to Karachi. And then till my A levels, I went to different schools in Karachi.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And I think when I was in my A levels, I had a very, very tough time
Mm.
because my father, because of the financial situation at home, had to move back to Norway. So my father wanted to come to Pakistan. He left a very good job in Norway to move to Pakistan, but he then couldn't, find any means of, becoming financially stable. So after, I think, a very long period of time, almost a decade, he had to move back to Norway. And so we were living apart. It was a really tough situation at home. Financially, my parents were struggling a little bit in that phase, especially. So when I was doing my A levels, I felt very unsupported. The teachers in my school did not really support the learning. They were
Mm.
just concerned with, I think,
Passing and
very
performing better.
surface level, that you come to the classroom, you don't come to the classroom, they're not bothered with it. They gave private tuitions for which you have to pay extra. I
Mm.
couldn't afford to do that. You had to buy very expensive books. There was a culture when I was doing my A levels. I don't know if it has changed now, but there was
Mm.
a culture that everyone went to private tuitions.
After
And
school, which
after
doesn't make
school,
sense to me.
yeah, and those teachers would charge a lot of money, and they were very famous.
Yes.
Their
No,
names
that
were.
culture is still there.
Mm.
My brother tells me all about it.
Yeah, so I mean, I was stuck because at home, my mother couldn't help me with my
Mm.
academics. She's not that highly educated. I still
Mm.
remember when I used to get homework after fourth, fifth grade. That homework used to be so complicated for my mother that she would actually take me to different homes, different houses in our apartment building and be like, Lala got this homework, can you help her out?
Mm.
And I used to feel a little resentful
Mm.
that, my mother can't help me and she has to take me around and, because you're a child and you don't understand. It's not her
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
I think she got married very young. She was 16 when she got married, or
Wow.
17.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And I don't think she even did her matriculation. She wanted to study, but then that's how it was in her family. So A levels was really hard for me. Some of the teachers were not even qualified to teach, to be honest. And when
Mm.
I would go to the, when I would, complain about it, I felt like, who do I talk to? All the other people, they were like, oh no, we go to tuition, so we don't really care if the biology teacher isn't teaching anything.
Yeah.
And I was going to a school where other kids around me, they came from very affluent backgrounds. So this was one of those posh, prestigious schools in the city, and most people had a lot of money, and they didn't really care about, if there is a student in school who can't afford to pay extra for tuition, and then that student is just stuck with the teachers that are there.
Can I ask, because now you're someone who's been through that experience, but now you've also like with science views worked with kids of all backgrounds. So what would you recommend to parents who do not have maybe a lot of academic knowledge, but they want what's best for their children, or and even like extracurricularly, what's like one piece of advice you would give them? And I know it's hard to sum it up.
Yeah, I think it takes a village to raise a child, to be honest, and to educate or engage a child. I
Mm,
think everyone should play a part. The onus should not just be on the parents.
mm,
Because, the kind of families and communities we work with, sometimes these are parents who work on daily wages.
yep.
What do you tell a parent like that, that you shouldn't go to work one day and you should sit at home and play with your child? It sounds like advice that's coming from a very privileged person. I have not experienced that kind of poverty. I have faced issues in my life, but the many layers of poverty that you see in Pakistan, whether it's being a girl, then being maybe a girl with disability, maybe being a boy with disability, and then coming from a low socioeconomic background. My parents could still afford to send me a beer to one of those big schools in
Mm,
Karachi.
mm,
Um, so I don't think I can actually be in the shoes of a child
mm,
or a young person whose parents are struggling daily to even make ends meet.
yep.
Um, so there are very different kinds of problems that these communities and families have. But for
Mm,
those who can have maybe that respite, have maybe some kind of, cushion or some kind of privilege, I think don't be scared of using things that you see online. Maybe YouTube, go to YouTube if you have access to the internet, if you have a device at home, a phone, and search for things that are freely available on the internet. There are so many resources that are available for free. And sometimes, you see homeschoolers, parents, mothers making that effort to find those small activities and then testing them out at home.
mm,
And then there are also things that you do in your everyday life where you can involve children more. If you're cooking, if you're baking, if you're going out shopping, just taking a child with you and talking about mathematics, talking about, things that they see around them, different processes is also science, learning. Basically making them aware of how the world functions, how this universe functions is science.
mm.
As long as that information is accurate, you're not telling them something that is, based on, I don't know, pseudoscience,
Superstition or something.
superstition. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think if you can take the onus to unlearn and learn yourself, and then
Mm,
pass on those small nuggets of learning and engagement, and try creating engagements rather than, sitting a child down and being like, okay, let's do maths now. We do that. They do
mm,
that. They're already doing that in the formal structure of the school or maybe in tuitions. How can you make it more playful, more like, things that we do, and ask the child what they're interested in? That's something we hardly do. We don't ask our children what they like to do.
mm,
Maybe there's a girl at home, she's 7-year old or 10-year old, and she don't assume that she would like certain things. Ask her what is she interested in? Is she interested in coding? Is she interested in cooking? Or is she interested in, playing with her dolls? Then what can you, sort of
Mm-hmm.
do in that sphere? You can let them play unstructured. You can also play with them. And what
Mm-hmm.
kind of conversations can you have? What kind of questions can you ask them? And similarly for a boy, if a boy is interested in, cooking,
Yeah.
or baking, why is that such a wrong thing? You shouldn't be forcing things on your children. Maybe you should ask them what they want to do, what they like, and maybe do fewer things. Because I sometimes also see that in more privileged children who come from more privileged backgrounds, they have a very busy schedule nowadays. They're doing sports, and they're doing tuitions, and they're doing school, and then they're doing so many things,
Little
and they're
businessman.
constantly busy,
Yeah.
and then they're also spending a lot of time in front of screens. Let children get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Boredom leads to more spaces and chances and opportunities to imagine, for imagination to happen. And then let them come up with things that they would like to do in that space. Let them have some free time where they can actually think about things
Mm-hmm.
and imagine things, and then decide what they want to do.
I've actually been reading a book called Bored and Brilliant, and the whole premise is that boredom leads to more ideas, more creativity. And because we've used screens to kind of filter all of that out, we've not left our brain any space to kind of explore and expand.
And in today's world, as as repetitive as it sounds, but if children can do more things with their hands,
Mm,
I'm not against technology, but I also think an overexposure of screens and technology is not going to help our children.
mm,
In many countries in the world where they have introduced tablets and laptops in the classroom, they're now reversing those things because children's ability to collaborate, to talk to each other, their social skills, even their writing skills, the use of
mm,
their hands, these things are having a negative impact on their on children. So do more research as a parent, find out where these things were introduced, what kind of impact did they have on children, and then make more smart choices about how
mm.
much time your children should be spending engaging with technology, and things like just going out and meeting your friends, having a meal together,
Yeah.
cycling, simple things that we used to do in our childhood
Mm,
have a lot of value. They hold a lot of value.
yeah. And then moving back from Pakistan, and now you moved to Norway, and I know you're fluent in the language too, which is pretty cool to me. Um, so how was that entire shift? And I know that you took biotech.
So I'm currently in the UK.
Mm,
I'm based here. For the last 3 years, I've been based here permanently.
mm,
Before that, I used to do a little bit of back and forth between Pakistan and the UK. I left Norway, I don't remember the year now, 2015 maybe? I don't remember. It was 2015, 2015. So I went to Norway I moved to Norway when I was 18 years old. My father was already living there. My older brother had also moved back from Pakistan. So half my family was in Norway, and then the
mm,
remaining half, my mother and younger brother, was still in Pakistan. So living in Norway was very, very challenging at that time, especially because Norway is a very small country and they have a very narrow culture. Um,
mm,
I think people who live in Karachi or Lahore or London or New York, they're used to places where, you see people from diverse backgrounds, you have opportunities to engage with, people who come from different cultures. You see, even when you walk on the street, you see eateries and food and everything that reflects, many different cultures, and it's very multicultural. And when I moved to Oslo, um you know um it was very hard even to find a Pakistani shop, for example.
mm,
People like yourself, um And even though Oslo is the capital and it's better than other parts of Norway, of course. I mean, it's the largest city uh, in Norway. It's the capital. So when I was at university, of course, I met people from Sri Lanka, people from Somalia, people from Pakistan, and many of them had either moved to Norway as adults, but most of them, I think, had grown up in Norway. So they were Norwegian Somalians, Norwegian Pakistanis, and Norwegian, and then Turkish or Iranian, or yeah. One of my best friends, I met her in Norway at university on the first day of university, and she's
Oh.
from Afghanistan. So I met really incredible people from different parts of the world, and I think that couldn't have happened maybe in Pakistan.
Mm.
Um, so I think, and also I was living away from home. I was living away from my mother. My father and brother were busy with their own lives and their, work and everything. And I think when you live alone not alone, because I had my father and brother with me, but when you live a little bit away from home, when you move away from home into a new space, a new culture, that teaches you many different kinds of skills, gives you a different kind of confidence. But that came after many challenges, integrating into that country, their culture, their language, their environment is so extreme. There's no Now, because of climate change, of course, things have changed a little bit, but back then in 2015, there used to be extreme snow, for many, many months. So
Mm.
everything was new. And I didn't
Mm.
even speak the language. I had to learn it because my
Oh,
parents
wow.
had not taught me the language, had not taught me the culture. I had gone there. I mean, we moved when we were, I don't know, 7 year old to Pakistan,
Mm.
and 6 or 7 year old. And then I think just once we had a brief trip, and then I moved there when I was 18.
Mm.
So it was very hard, but I also got so much from that country. I'm very proud of the fact that I got a lot from Norway. It's Being a Norwegian is a big part of my identity. Um, Even though I don't live in that country anymore, but I think I do hold certain part of that identity very close to my heart, because no culture, no country is perfect, of course. So I like to hold on to things that I found to be very, very things that
Precious to
allowed
you.
me to
Yeah.
thrive
Mm.
and grow as a person.
Mm. And honestly, when you move around places, y- it becomes a part of your home. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you have like homes in multiple different places at this point.
Yes, I think that's one constant that has stayed in my life. I've moved countries about 5 or 6 times in my life.
Oh my
So
gosh.
there's
Okay.
been a lot of, yeah, back and forth.
Yeah.
It comes with its disadvantages. It's
Mm.
difficult to, for example, maintain relationships. You face, a lot of challenges in your
Mm.
relationships, in close relationships. I also envy people who have grown up in the same city, lived
Yeah.
all their life in one
Mm.
city, because they have a very unique kind of a relationship with that city.
Mm-hmm.
They know every nook and corner. They have
Mm.
friends, they have memories in those streets, and they can probably, that city is like a friend
Mm-hmm.
because of the people and the communities and the physical spaces. I don't have that
Mm.
to a full extent. I have lived 12 years in Norway. I've lived a few years, I think 6 7 years in Lahore,
Mm-hmm.
18 years in Karachi. Now I'm living in the UK, but for some reason, I don't feel, I feel like all of these places are home, but at the same time, for
You
someone
don't
who's
feel
lived like
completely home.
maybe, yeah, 40 years in a city or in a country, it's a very different kind of a relationship that you have with the people, the community, and
Yeah.
that physical space. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, Karachi is a big part of my identity. I grew up there. The
Mm.
kind of emotions it evokes when I go to Karachi is no other place, can evoke those kind of emotions. I went to school there. My
Yeah.
childhood was spent there. My mother used to drive us around, even when there were used to be strikes and everything, and we used to go to school, and the places, the landmarks, they're part of my nostalgia, my memory. But now we don't have a home, a physical home in Karachi. My
Mm,
parents sold their that home. They've moved to Norway. So it's strange, for me that if I go to that city, I don't have a brick and mortar place
yeah.
where I can go or I can knock on the door and be like, okay, I've come home. I
Oh,
used to
yeah.
have that, 2, 3 years ago. Now I don't. I can probably go there and drive in that street and see, oh, this used to be our home.
Just like bringing it back to context, you were in biotech and then you moved to science communication, and that shift for some people may be really huge. So, what was that aha moment or maybe experience that made you decide on the shift?
So I got into so when the time came that, okay, what should I study? I chose biotechnology again because I loved genetics, and so I thought, okay, this would be cool. This could be something I can do. But at the back of my mind, I was a failure because I didn't
Mm,
get into medical school. So for the 3 years of my degree, I kept trying to get into medical school by taking some extra
wow.
courses. And I was not the only one. There were other young women around me who were doing the same. I started doing that, and that's how my degree started getting affected.
Mm,
And back home, I was still a loser, a failure because my parents didn't understand, oh, what exactly is biotechnology? What is
mm,
this? What is she doing? Every summer, we were taken home to Pakistan, and there was this immense pressure that now we will meet our relatives, we will meet our mother, and everybody will judge you. Oh, you're looking fat. Oh, you've gained so much weight. What have you been doing all year? Oh, another
oh
year at
my God.
university. Oh, you didn't get into med school. So I'm telling you my mental state of mind when I was
Yeah,
between 18 to 25. This kept
yeah.
going on till I was 25. And then a day arrived, Abir, when I realized I'm 25 years old. I've never worked a single day in my life. I'm failing at university in my degree. I had recently joined Facebook, and now I saw all the people I went to high school with were, I don't know, doing some brilliant degrees in universities around the world, even in Pakistan, were getting jobs. I felt like such a big loser, and everything crashed. I
Oh,
went into deep depression. I left university. My degree was incomplete. And this is me after like 5 years. No
mm,
degree, no job, nothing, living in a
oh
country where
gosh.
I feel so alienated. I don't know the
Yeah,
language, don't know how, like language obviously I was learning, but you're never like there, because
yeah.
and at home, it's very depressing. My father was used to work at night, sleep at in the day, so many other things happening.
Mm,
And then like that was the worst time of my life. I think for 6 months I stayed in at home. I used to lie to my parents that I go to university. I used to close my door and just
wow.
pretend that I was not there or I just come back. There were several weeks where I did not shower, didn't brush my teeth. The depression was
Mm,
so severe. Then I decided to do something about it, and I picked myself up and I went to this place called Nav in Norway, which is like a job center. They help you
mm,
get job, and it's a very depressing thing when you go to that place
mm,
because when you're really at the bottom, you
yeah.
go to a place like I went there and I felt like, okay, life has come to a real low. I used to go to one of the best universities in the country, and now look at me, I'm here. And I told them that, I think I'd like to work. I want to take a break from academics because my experiences at university, they had, spiraled into something very, very negative.
Mm,
So I started looking for job, and that's when I found out about Forskerfabrikken. They're a social enterprise. They work in Norway, and they make science cool for children,
mm,
hands on. I just stumbled upon them, saw their website, and I was like, oh, they have science communicators who have masters and PhDs. Why are they going to hire me? Because I
mm,
haven't even completed my bachelor's. They were not hiring. I just wrote an email and said, I'd like to work with you. And then weeks went by and nobody replied. And then suddenly I got a call and they said, we got your email and our founder is has been away and now she's back and she's saying, would you like to come and have a conversation? Would you like to come
Mm.
and have lunch with us? I hardly spoke two words in that interview, but before that, I had started volunteering. I even through depression, I knew that I can't get paid work, so I started volunteering. I used to volunteer for a student magazine in Oslo, and that magazine was very, very amazing. Some of the best science communicators from that university were
Mm.
writing in the science section. I started hanging out with them. They were really inspiring people for me. And I learned from them and I used to write in English.
Mm.
And I was also volunteering for a Tamil center where they used to help young people with homework. Um, and even though my Norwegian was really bad, I would still go and I would still try to help.
Mm.
And it was a very difficult place to get to. I remember on Sundays, I used to wake up really early in the morning in the dark, go to
Mm.
that place. I used to be covered with snow, slippery snow, but I kept doing
Wow.
these things even through depression. They were very hard things to do, but
Mm.
I kept doing them, and those things helped me in that interview because my boss later on told me when she hired me that you were really horrible in that interview. I only hired you. Yeah, she said that.
Oh my gosh.
She said you were so underconfident, you hardly
Yeah.
spoke, because I was very
Mm.
underconfident. And she said that I only hired you because I had read your blog and you wrote such
Mm.
amazing articles. I was very impressed by that because it takes a lot to write. So I would say this to young people that if you're struggling in some phase of your life, go out there, get some experience. Even a few
Mm.
months of volunteering will give you back your confidence, maybe. It will help you learn new skills, and that can also maybe be a path that can lead to something bigger, like a job or
Yeah.
I. And that's how I got my first job. I stayed with them for 5 years. I left university a bit because I had ruined my, that degree, that experience. But also when I used to go to the science lab, when you're doing a bachelor's in science, there will be lab work, right?
Yeah.
When I used to step into the lab, I used to feel very underconfident. How does
Mm.
one do these experiments? Or what if I get something wrong? I don't understand these procedures. And I used to started feeling that people who grew up in Norway, they were better at me than these things, in
Mm.
practical things. And that reinforcement kept happening, and I felt I got actually admission in a microbiology program in masters, but I knew that if I go into this, because of the language, because of my underconfidence in doing lab work, I will get stuck into a degree,
Mm.
and my parents will, and everyone will expect that I get it done, and that will not happen, and I will fall into depression again. So I didn't take that
Mm.
path. And my parents were very disappointed. I left a master's,
Oh.
I got admission, I didn't go down that path. I went into
Mm.
science communication, and that always was considered a lesser path,
Mm.
a less prestigious one.
Mm.
Because, even a society will be like, oh, you got a master's, you got a PhD, you're a Dr. Lala Rukh. But the path I chose for many, many years, my parents, my family, and certain sections of society will be like, oh, but you left science, but you didn't become a doctor, oh, but you
Mm.
didn't do a PhD. But then in other sections, in other sectors, I started gaining appreciation for the work that I was doing. And I realized that I need to shut these voices
Mm.
and I need to believe that what I'm doing is also worthwhile, it's valuable.
Mm.
But if I hadn't learned to shut down those voices, I wouldn't have been able to walk this path. And then, of course, my in laws, my husband, they supported me. They saw that, okay, the path that I'm following is valuable. So,
Mm.
if someone is not there to tell you that what you're doing is also valuable, is also worthwhile, then, you know,
It's hard to find that
it's,
confidence.
it's hard to keep going.
Yeah, that's very true. So I think that was obviously what started your passion for science communication. And I think I read somewhere that because you saw that in Norway, you were like, wait, I could also be doing this in Pakistan at some point. So doing something internationally, keeping that sustainable for like almost like a decade now, I think. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I've been, so some of my classmates are in Science Fuse. My brother took an internship with you. My youngest cousin is with you, and so I was like fascinated by this whole platform. And you have the discussions with scientists, and that's actually the reason I told you that I started this, is because I want to hear more from people in STEM, especially women in STEM, because I couldn't find a voice or someone who's doing that work when I started. So how was that connection for you, and how did you keep it up for this long? And now it's obviously very successful too.
Um, I think for that first part that you, first of all, thank you so much for watching that series, Meet a Scientist, and it is always nice to hear how Science Fuse has, touched someone's life, or how Science Fuse has been a part of their growing up years. Now that we are almost a decade old, we are now listening to these stories. Oh, I was a volunteer. Oh, I used to work at Science Fuse. Oh, I knew somebody at university who used to work with Science Fuse. I
Mm.
saw something on Facebook. That's really what we had hoped to achieve. But you don't know when you set out that this is what you're going to achieve.
Yeah.
If I have to be honest, when I was in Norway, I think just like my father, I was restless and just not happy living there at that time in my life.
Mm.
I wanted to move back to Pakistan. I felt I could make more of a difference, and Pakistan has always been a big part of my identity. Um, because before moving to Pakistan at that time, I actually first moved to the UK because I got married. I moved here. My husband was based here. That's the only reason why I came to the UK. I would not have come here if it hadn't been for him. When I came here, I started working at the Science Museum in London,
Mm.
and I was a science communicator, and I felt very restless in that 1 year when I worked there, because even though, yes, being at a big museum, it's 200-year-old museum, I had
Yeah.
never seen science being communicated like that. But I felt like I could do more in my life. I wanted to challenge myself more. And I was looking at my husband, for example, that he gets to do more challenging work. He's earning more money, which means that, money has never been a catalyst for me. But when I was younger, I used to think about, because I lived for quite some time in Norway, and I used to compare that women my age, what were they doing in life? They were buying their first houses, they were living independently.
Mm.
And I used to question why this was not the case for me. What is it in my upbringing, and what is it about me and the things that my parents didn't let me do, or my environment didn't allow me to do, that, why am I so underconfident? Why don't
Mm.
I have those skills? And there was that hunger and thirst to develop those skills, like almost like a, I don't know, like a rage or something,
Yeah.
like a desperation to do this, to prove. And that can come with good and bad things.
Mm.
But ultimately, now when I look back, I think my work has given me so much.
Mm.
I had to make a lot of sacrifices, but still, and I think I sometimes was not able to balance work with other things that are
Mm.
also important to lead a fulfilling life, like relationships, or because I was obsessed,
Mm.
and even that is not healthy. But to your point, that's why I left my job in the UK and I moved to Pakistan. And it was a very tough decision, but I did it. I don't know where I got that,
Confident.
confidence
Yeah.
from. Because even when I was 18 and I moved from Pakistan to Norway, my parents didn't want me to do that.
Mm.
I had said that no, I will go. My
Mm.
brother has gone and I will go. And my mother was not happy because,
Mm.
they wanted that, okay, she's a young girl, she should just stay in Pakistan. Pakistan is considered safer by my family, at least more conservative, more,
Mm.
more closer to our traditional values. But
Mm.
at that time, I wanted to leave Pakistan when I was 18 because I was so tired, and the restrictions at home, the culture and the experiences I had at school, so I wanted to go away. That was challenging, but it proved in hindsight to be a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was in the UK, I wanted to go back to Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, no, this is not where I want to be. I want to go to Pakistan. I want to do something that will challenge me. But Abir, I also had this arrogance. I felt that I know something, that I'm going to go to Pakistan and teach everyone that I know this. And you know what? I've learned this from Norway and I've learned this from UK. And you have that arrogance when you're younger and when you've lived in societies where things are, more, they have progressed more. Science
Mm-hmm.
communication in the UK has been around for 200 years because they've had the resources and have had the infrastructure to be able to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
And in my arrogance, I was like, yeah, yeah, I know so much and I'm going to go and then people are going to,
Mm-hmm.
value this. And so I had to unlearn that no, there are people here who have been doing amazing work,
Mm-hmm.
need to need to be humble enough and have the humility first to listen and
Mm-hmm.
understand what the problems are in Pakistan. There is no copy pasting.
Yeah. So there's actually this book I'm reading by Melinda Gates, I think The Power of Lift, and she mentions this exact point where you can't just take what you know and just come and paste it. You need to listen to the people who've been working that sphere
Yeah.
and tailor it to that place.
Yeah, and this is a big problem in the world of aid as well.
Hmm.
Foreign aid that comes to Pakistan and other countries. It's very important to invest in people, leaders, and organizations who work in close proximity to the problem.
Yes.
And I know there is corruption even amongst those, but still,
Mm-hmm.
invest in people who are locally rooted,
Hmm.
who understand the problem, who understand the culture, who understand the local. And I had to do that first because I had been living away from Pakistan for 12 years.
Yeah.
And I had never done that kind of work in Pakistan. Even though I grew up in that country, that gives me an advantage that I understand the culture, the language, how
Hmm.
things work. But I hadn't done social work, social impact work. I was just a
Yeah.
student when I was living. So first I had to unlearn, had to learn, had to really, really, what should I say, do the grunt work. Go
Yeah.
out, take those tubs and bags and materials and go into communities and
Mm-hmm. So did you find
understand.
people to support you at that point, or did your team start
Yeah,
forming
many.
later on?
Many people supported us. Many. I
Wow.
know as a human being, one tends to fixate on the
Mm-hmm.
few negative people who, you know, put us
Yeah.
down and all. But I would say 90% of people, generous to the core,
Wow.
most of them women.
Mm-hmm.
I met so many incredible leaders and builders and social entrepreneurs and writers and journalists and scientists and
Mm-hmm.
school leaders. I think my life is so rich because I met all of these people in
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan doing incredible work against all odds,
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think
against so many.
it's that if you f focus on a path and you do that consistently, then people naturally tend to help push you towards that path?
Yeah, of course, consistency. They
Mm.
say you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be consistent.
Yeah. And
Because
most
perfect,
initiatives start like stop after a year or two or maybe three. So what is the secret behind Science Fuse, consistently growing and consistently improving?
I mean, some initiatives stop, but then we need to look at why they stop. I've had
Mm-hmm.
some privileges in my life. My
Mm-hmm.
husband has always done the 9 to 5 job,
Mm-hmm.
so he could, support the family financially, and I could go
Mm-hmm.
out and do more experimental work. Not
Mm.
everyone has that kind of support.
That's
So,
true.
when something fails, it's not always that you can learn a lot from that failure. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not always that person's fault that their organization couldn't do work consistently. People in our work in the development sector, they keep saying, oh, your work has to be at a certain scale, it has to be sustainable, um it has to be a solution that can be scaled. What do you mean by that? If
Mm.
it's not serving millions, is it not useful? If it's
Mhm.
serving a small community, does it not have value? I also used to think like that.
Mhm.
And secondly, scale can be vertical. It can be, sorry, horizontal. It can also be vertical. So I think some people will ultimately, eventually, maybe continue doing work which is at a smaller scale, but that doesn't mean that their work is not valuable.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the means or the privilege or even health or capacity to do more. I
Mhm.
know how much my relationships and my health have suffered over the years because the work I do is very hard. I don't talk about these things because people will be like, yeah, because you choose to walk this path. Why are you
Mhm.
complaining? But the fact is that, you know, for us to have stayed so consistent, so many things have gone into it.
Mhm.
My family initially supported me, my mother supported me, then they didn't support me, but my in-laws were supporting me, my husband was supporting me. Then my family turned around, came around, and they were like, oh, we'd like to
Yeah.
support. So what I'm trying to say is there's so many factors, and then the funding, the grants, who
Mhm.
gets selected, who gets the money. You cannot do this kind of work without resources, without human resource, without financial
Yeah.
resource. You
Mhm.
cannot do this kind of work if you don't have mental stability.
Mhm.
If you don't, you're not supported, or you're not,
Mhm.
given that kind of supportive environment.
Mhm.
And for me, even in those years when I did not feel that I was being supported, I somehow turned to my work because I gained a lot of community and friendships from my work.
Mhm.
And I got a lot of strength on a personal level from my work. So my
Mhm.
work is a big part of my identity, but not many people want to live a life like mine.
Yeah. It's a
They
choice.
it's a choice. And
Yeah.
and people want to do other things, and they don't want to. So I think when you ask someone this question, you've been consistent, and maybe ask them, what has it taken to be
Yeah.
this consistent? What have you given up?
Yeah.
And I would like more people like myself to grow things, but not give up things that I had to give up, not go through the struggle. So how can I make that path easier for other women or other
Yeah.
even men?
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be so hard.
Mhm. I had a question regarding that. Like you mentioned giving up things and you mentioned grants and you mentioned that you had a certain amount or have a certain amount of privilege living in Norway and having the flexibility to be able to work for science views or like lead science views. Do you think that people in Pakistan do have to choose between whether they can financially support their lifestyle versus do work that resonates with them?
Yeah, that's a big, big, big thing. And
Yeah.
so many people in Pakistan have still chosen to do work
Hmm.
that is not financially sustainable, but they've
Yeah.
done it, they've followed their heart, their passion, and also want to heal and repair things that are broken. I
Hmm.
have seen people like Sabina Khatri, people like Shabina Mustafa Saiba, and many young people of your age who
Hmm.
come and volunteer for causes, who go out there into the world, give so freely their time, their energy, their expertise, their wisdom, their knowledge, and
Yeah.
they don't always receive things back financially. I know
Mm.
they might gain in other ways, skills, or it is very commendable how people in our country, against all odds, against so many layers of poverty, are able to build things,
Mhm.
repair things, but they need more support from the government, from the private sector, from their homes, from their families. Then
Yeah.
they can do even more. And this is a very, very valid fact that if you have to choose between earning a living
Mhm.
and doing something that is so experimental and so risky. Abdul Rauf Saab, he's the founder of Pakistan Science Club. He has a very interesting story. He's a
Mhm.
man, and a man is supposed to be the provider in
Breadwinner.
our
Yep.
culture. And
Mhm.
he talks about this that he used to, I think, run a shop, a milk shop or something, because
Mhm.
that's what his family. But he had a very strong passion, Abir, for science communication. And
Wow.
he put that aside and he started
Mhm.
in his garage. And a lot of programs that Pakistan Science Club runs in Karachi are for middle income or lower middle income families in Korangi and
Mm.
all those places. So, such a wonderful story. And this at a time when I think people had not even heard of science communication.
Yeah, crazy.
It's a very novel idea in Pakistan because in the
Hmm.
UK, in places like the UK, this has existed for 200 years. People
Yeah.
like Michael Faraday,
Hmm.
were doing science communication out of passion voluntarily at the Royal Institution, doing public lectures. So this was
Hmm.
normal.
Yeah.
It was normalized. But in a country like Pakistan, you're a science teacher, that is heard of,
Mhm.
but you don't, suddenly turn your garage into a place where children come and tinker and build robots. And
Yeah.
now they're building Pakistan's in-house, local telescopes.
Wow.
And
Mashallah,
that's
that's
so
amazing.
amazing and inspiring. And he was the only person I knew who existed and was doing this kind of work in Pakistan when we first started off.
Mm, mm. I mean, it fills your heart when you do stuff like that and you meet people. And I think some of the best things you can get out of life happen in those moments right there. But it's still hard that you have to make a decision between knowing that you can feed your family
Yeah.
and doing meaningful works. And I know that Science Fuse is trying to move towards a more sustainable model. So how do you think that bridge will look like, and what are the resistances that you faced?
I think, yeah, so we've kept this element of sustainability right from the beginning because, as I said, I moved back to Pakistan after 12 years, did not know anybody, had
Mm,
no network. I only knew a few friends back from my school day.
mm-hmm,
Uh, and my parents are very ordinary people, as I've already described. Um, so there is no social capital, there's no cultural capital I had, and limited financial capital. But of course, I had some other privileges, like my family was supporting me, etc., etc. We had a home in Karachi. So I thought,
mm-hmm,
okay, let's try and see. Um, so then we built sustainability from day one,
mm-hmm,
and we also built the element of being inclusive from day one. So
mm-hmm,
we would go to big private schools like Huck Academy,
mm-hmm,
and then we would also go to places like Kiran Foundation in Layari.
mm-hmm,
And they seeked us out, when we were doing a program at Huck Academy. Sabina Khatri Saiba found out about Science Fuse, and they, of course, were running a small school in Layari where mother and child would come together and, learn. And this was a kindergarten.
Oh,
And in a
wow.
place like Leari, which is, has so many problems from gang wars to
Mm-hmm,
um, poverty and lack of infrastructure, this was a place, a sanctuary where mothers and children were learning and thriving. And she reached out and she said, Lala, I've seen Science Fuse is doing this program at Huck. Can you come to
mm-hmm,
Leari and do this work? Do a
mm-hmm.
session for our children. And
Wow.
my mother was like, no, 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 you can't go to Leari. The people will kill you and something will happen. I will go with you. And you have to wear a shalwar kameez, you have to wear a dupatta. And both
Yeah.
my mother and I went for the first time to Leari, and we saw that there were normal people there. And even Sabina ji was going from DHA to Leari.
Mm.
And last year we did a whole year long collaboration with that school.
Oh, wow.
They invested in that program about 1.6 million rupees, raised it for us, and we engaged 400 children from that school, 20 mothers and teachers together in a
Mm.
year-long programming. But that took
Amazing.
many years, that building that relationship, them trusting us. We did many
Mm-hmm.
smaller programs in between, and finally that big
And
project
seeing
happened.
value in it, because initially when I got into science communication, I was like, what impact am I making by telling a student about science? Do they even remember it the next day? But long term, you notice how big of a difference it makes.
And it has to be consistent. I know that small experiences like that one experience changed my life, right?
Hmm.
With that article. So
Yeah.
sometimes even singular moments can have big impact, but
Hmm.
then that needs to be also sustained, right?
Yeah.
After that, if I could have gotten access to maybe scientists or people working in genetics, or
Hmm.
maybe I could have gotten more mentorship or training in lab work, maybe
Hmm.
I could have, done something else.
Hmm.
So I think one thing that people don't understand about education and engagement is that a child, imagine the day they're born and then 12 years of education. That's 12 years.
Yeah.
You can't build somebody's science capital with just one experience. It
Mm-hmm.
needs consistent effort at home, in school, 12
Mm-hmm.
years of a person's life. And again, even beyond 12 years, their science capital will either grow or, not grow. So this requires a very deeper kind of investment,
Mm-hmm.
consistent effort, which the public and the private sector must commit themselves to. In a
Mm-hmm.
country where 25 million children are out of school, and the remaining 24, 25 million who are going to school and receiving
Mm-hmm.
substandard education, and a whole network of private schools, small private schools where teachers are not even paid proper salary. How do
Mm-hmm.
you expect, you know, this problem to be solved if not everyone contributes?
Yeah.
Science fuse alone cannot do everything.
Yeah, and one of the things that I feel like you guys are trying to do to change that is getting all sorts of people from every background, all ages, regardless of what they do into science communication. Because my brother went to one of your internships, I believe, and he was like, there were people from all ages, and that's
Yeah,
just beautiful.
yeah, yeah, because I think we actually want more non-science people to come and
Yeah.
engage with our work and see that science is not that complicated. It's also connected to what they do, their daily
Hmm.
life, and how they can then embrace science
Hmm.
and talk about it and how they enjoy it and use it.
Yeah.
Filmmakers and storytellers and writers. So
Hmm.
we're always greedy to have people of different ages, different backgrounds, parents,
Yeah.
teachers who work in our last year in our fellowship, we engaged 150 people throughout the year. In three
Wow.
cycles, 150 people, sorry,
Yeah.
151 people, we counted 151 people from,
Yeah.
I think, almost 8 or 9 different cities of Pakistan, not just Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. People
Mm.
came from even smaller cities like Okada.
Mm.
And these who were these people? High schoolers, university goers, parents, teachers who work with children with disabilities,
Wow.
teachers who work in low income schools and also higher end schools, school
Mhm.
leaders, administrators, everybody together. Three
Mhm.
cycles, 151 people. And we said, you have to, what you learned during the fellowship, you have to go and implement one science engagement. That's mandatory. So
Mm.
3,000 children were engaged. Even though it's a
Wow.
short-term
Wonderful.
engagement, but this program, we're going to keep running it every year and we hope to grow
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
bigger, inshallah, with time.
But can I tell you, even the impact that it has on the participants, like my brother completely changed. His confidence changed, his interest in meeting people and scientific engagement. Before that, I had to really push him to sign up. And he was 15, so he was barely over the cutoff. And then after that, he was like, yeah, sign me up. I
What's
will
his
sign
name?
up myself. Hamza Hassan.
Okay, I think I remember this in one of the online meetings. Somebody mentioned that I
Yeah.
signed up for this because my sister said you have to go to this program. I
That was
think that was your brother. Yeah, I think
yes.
it was your brother.
But he really loved it so much and he found his
Exactly.
community. And I think one of the important things is that you're connecting people of different ages and making them understand other age groups and other
Yeah.
backgrounds too. So
Yes.
that's brilliant. And since
Yes.
we're nearing the 1 hour mark, I just had to ask like one question. You've been a leader, you've been a science communicator, you've been an entrepreneur for so many years. What are some of the mistakes or lessons, especially when it comes to leadership, that you've learned over the years?
So many. Uh, but one thing that, you have to, one thing that I realized, two things actually. So couple of years ago, actually in 2018, I became an Acumen Fellow. This is a very prestigious leadership program, and it's a global program. They have cohorts in many different countries, and that program opened up many, many doors for me in terms of funding that we got for Science Fuse, in terms of, you know, honing. my leadership skills and gave me a lot of confidence and also put me on global stages and paved the
Yeah.
path for so many other opportunities, right? Because you have that label then that, okay, you're an acumen fellow, that means something. And then later on, when we applied for the Malala Fund grant, that must have helped. Um,
Mm.
so, when I became a fellow, they recruit fellows every year. And after a couple of years, one of my team members, I encouraged her to apply. Her name is Aruj Khalid.
Mm.
And she was very unsure whether she'll get selected or not, but ultimately she got selected. And before they could select her, they gave me a call, like a reference call that, what do you feel about, is she ready for this program and things like that. And I said to them, yes, because I think that people, if they get these chances at an earlier age, it's
Mm.
much more important because they're still developing into the kind of leaders that they want to become. And this is
Mm.
the right stage for her. And so she became an Acumen Fellow. She completed the 1 year program, and then she left Science Fuse.
Mm.
And then what happened that next year, another one of my team members, Imama, I encouraged her to apply, and she again was like, "Oh, let's see, let's apply, and then see what happens." She got to the final stage, and again I get a call
Wow.
from the same person in the
Uh-huh.
Acumen team, and they're like, and that person asked me a question. She said, now we have to decide whether we choose imama or not. I mean, that's their prerogative. I have nothing. I'm just They're just calling me to have a
Yeah.
chat with me. And she said to me, but how do you feel about this, that first Aruj became a fellow, she left Science Fuse. Now if this person becomes a fellow, they might also leave Science Fuse after maybe the program ends. um because one of the criteria to apply is that you must be working somewhere and doing
Mm.
work in social impact. So she said, how do you feel that Science Fuse is like a ladder for them,
Mm.
and they step up and then they leave? And for a while I felt bad, and I felt like, oh yeah, that's what I've been feeling, that we've become a stepping stone, we've become a ladder. But then when she asked me this question, I thought about it, and we flipped it, and we said, oh, so we are actually a ladder and a stepping stone for young people
Mm.
into a world where now they will step into different spaces and exercise leadership.
Mm.
After Aruj completed the Acumen Fellowship, she applied for Harvard very,
Mhm.
very reluctantly and skeptically, and
Yeah.
she got accepted. Yeah, and she and I were having a conversation, and most of the work experience, most of the experiences that both these women had, because they were
Mm.
fresh out of university in Pakistan, were at Science Fuse. So
Mm.
instead of thinking that, we are just a stepping stone and why are people leaving us,
Mhm.
actually invest in their growth,
Mhm.
and then just let them go.
Mhm.
Let them go, because when they step out of your space, when they stepped out of Science Fuse, they're still serving the education sector. They're still serving the development sector. So they're still solving that complex problem. Maybe
Mhm.
now they're solving it from a different platform, from a different position, from a different country. But the point is that they're still serving the same purpose. They're still trying to
Yeah.
build equity in the world of education, and that should
Mhm.
be a badge on you, not be like, oh, this is such a disappointment that, people
Yeah.
left. So we started looking at impact very differently. We started
Mm.
realizing that our impact is not just on children and young people or teachers that we work with. That's one aspect of it. But the
Mhm.
other aspect is all the leaders who have worked with us for 5 years, 6 years, fresh out of university. This has been a playing ground for them to build their skills, hone their leadership, and then move on to other places where now they're creating a difference in the world. And one of our fellows is Moiz Ahmed Khan.
Mm.
He was on the brink of leaving science.
Yeah.
He used to study in the UK, did his master's, and then he went back to Pakistan for a gap year and said, I was disillusioned. I didn't want to continue science because it was such a hard path. I thought I'll do CSS and just leave scientific research. He
Mm.
became a Science Fuse fellow, saw the curiosity in children, that innate curiosity, and he said, that is what made me go back to the UK, pursue a
Wow.
PhD, and now he's doing a postdoctorate, and he's working on genetically engineering mosquitoes to
Mhm.
eradicate malaria. It's a
Mm.
big statement for him to say, that I chose to come back to science because of the fellowship experience. So for us, these people don't have to necessarily work at Science Fuse or
Mm-hmm.
contribute in that way that they are full-time employees. All three of
Mm-hmm.
them are, by the way, advisory council members at Science Fuse.
Wow.
So they still come back, they still connect with the
Mm-hmm.
cause. We
Mm-hmm.
don't keep inviting them, they come back themselves. They
Yeah.
take ownership of this mission. So passing on ownership and also not falling into that trap that okay, we need to have people stay with us. No, we are contributing to their growth, and their growth will lead to solving this complex problem. So
Mm.
that's something I learned many years ago because before that I couldn't see that this was our impact. Now we
Mm-hmm.
see proudly that this is our impact.
Mm. Because I've had some founders who don't work in the educational space, but they struggle with getting people and then training them. And then when they're good enough, they suddenly leave the company or even leave the country. And so they really struggle with that. But perhaps keeping a more open mindset, even though you have to retrain people, lets
Hmm.
you build a wider
But
network.
then that's you building, nurturing another leader. So
Yeah,
you can just look at it from a different lens. It's the
yeah,
lens that we changed. We're doing the same thing, but
yeah,
then them leaving created space for other people to step in and
yeah,
learn. And now we
yeah.
have so many other people. But I
Mhm.
can't predict that. I can't tell who will come. Now we have Cheyenne. She's such an incredible leader. She stepped
Mm,
into Science Fuse right after university. This is her first job. And she came just a
mm,
year and a half ago through a fellowship program.
mm.
So if Imama hadn't left, if Aruj hadn't left, how would Cheyenne come? How would
Yeah.
Cheyenne grow into this leader? How would I get to witness her growth? It is a
Mm,
privilege and delight to witness these people's growth and be a part of their journey.
mhm,
Grow in your own way and grow slowly. Don't
mhm,
compromise your health or mental well being for
mm,
what people consider to be, oh, this is not good enough growth. I would also give that. I learned that very late in life. Don't sacrifice your relationships, don't sacrifice your mental health. Don't, this thing that hustle is a good thing, do it at
mhm.
any cost is not good.
Yeah.
Even though I don't follow this advice as well as much as I
Oh,
should,
uh-huh.
it is very because I'm addicted to my work. I wake up
Mm,
every single day very excited, and as I said, this can be a good or a bad thing. It
yeah.
has affected my health, it has affected my relationships. So I always
Mm,
tell this to people that please don't take a break, slow down.
yeah.
And I tell this to myself every day. I find it
Yeah.
very hard to do.
That's valuable advice. But thank
Give
you, Lala,
time,
for
give time to your parents, give time to your
yeah.
children, give time to community, do these things.
Yeah. It matters in the long run. Just
Yeah.
focusing on one thing backfires sometimes.
And even at work, you can I started we've been doing that at work also, finding community at work.
Mm,
But sometimes that will work with for some people, it might not work for everyone. I found some very good people at Science Fuse who've become friends, who've become family.
mm,
You can try doing that, building a better culture,
yeah.
but also balance everything in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. This definitely went over the 1 hour mark, but I feel like we had a lot to cover, and I had a really good conversation and I learned a lot out of it. So thank you for spending your Sunday with me.
Thank you. This was such a great quality of conversation. I think my Sunday
Mhm.
has turned around. I
Oh,
feel so much better and so much more inspired, and I'm so grateful that you um, took time out
of
and
course.
gave me a chance to learn from you and see where what your curiosity is about Science Fuse, and also how you shared your experiences of yourself and your brother of having engaged with Science
Yeah,
Fuse, and that always gives us so much you know
energy.
strength and energy.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you
yeah.
so much.
Thank you.